Welcome back to Satisfactory. My name is Nilaus and we are here with the completed bus base, and everything is produced, everything is in circulars, and everything is thrown into an awesome sync. So what is this episode going to be about? Well, I think that there have been a lot of questions about the main bus. There have been a lot of critique, and some of it is completely unfounded, some of it is reasonable, some of it is just lack of understanding. So in this episode, I'm going to be walking through my base, explaining it. It's pretty simple. It's not that big of a base. It's 1.8 kilometers long and 700 meters wide. So that's just the platform that we're using. There's some outposts out in the wild, you can see here in the horizon. But aside from that, it's mainly just this is the base that we're looking at. So it should be easy to walk through a base and explain the principles. We will be both doing it from the forwards and backwards direction, in the sense that I'll be sort of taking addressing some of the points about the scaling of this, but I'll also be sort of explaining the idea from the beginning of how to make the main bus. The first thing I want to do is I want to show you something, the way that I make sure that the base is working. It will come as no surprise to a lot of you, I'm sure, that how I make my factories. And that is it. This is, of course, a spreadsheet. And what you see here is basically an overview of, in the left-hand column, we have all the lines on the bus. And on the top, we have all the branches of the bus. So you can see that's kind of a green diagonal. And those are the things that are then produced on the bus and then put back on the bus. And you can also see something else, that is that there's nothing in the lower left-hand triangle, and that's because everything that we are producing is only being used for subsequent things. That means I don't use any alternate recipes that sort of start using aluminium beams for steel beams in an earlier recipe, but I do it in the late recipe. So just a note, the most important thing about this is actually the column that says balance, which is green all the way down. And that means that everything that's produced is producing more than is being consumed by any other subsequent thing on the bus. That is super important. And what you can also see is that the quantities, some of them are really high, but they're not that bad. For example, copper is what we use the most of, and we are not even using 2,000. Other things I'm putting in is like raw crystals. I'm putting 2,400 in, but I am using only 350. So that's kind of crazy. And also rubber and plastic, I have quite a decent excess of that. Also aluminum ingots is actually being used quite a lot as well. So I think it's interesting to see this and get a sense of, oh yeah, it's actually working, and it is actually sort of balancing. So that is basically in terms of how the base is performing. And on top of that, if we want to sort of look at other base performance metrics, this is a pretty good base performance metrics. 26 million points per minute. It's kind of going up and down a little bit, and I'd say it hovers around 25 million. So right now it's up to 26, it went down to 23, but generally it hovers around 25 million points per minute, which I also think is an absolute amazing amount. Now, it's not the most amount that you can absolutely get, but it is very, 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 very valuable. This base is built entirely with the game mechanics. The only difference is that I am using the fly mode once in a while, particularly for showing you things so that you can get a better overview, because I feel that playing Satisfactory and watching Satisfactory can be a little bit dizziness inducing, I guess. Motion sickness inducing, because of the first person view in between machines. So since I want to give you an overview, we're going to be stuck here in flight mode, which of course disables achievements, but I do not care. Let me go back and start with the beginning. Start by explaining the concept of the bus, how it works, and how you should design it if you want to build something like it. Some of the things have sort of evolved gradually, and some things have sort of been designed from the beginning. One of the things that I designed from the beginning, that I both like and dislike, is the fact that I was saying, how big should a bus be? And I decided that it should be 6 wide, because I knew that the biggest blueprint would be 6 wide, so that it had to be that. And I didn't want them sort of right next to each other, so I decided to have 2 lines in between, which was all fine and good. But what actually happened is that by the end of it, 27 branches of the bus, I just ran out of space, and I am now just all the way up here, and I could not add a single more item on the bus. So not great. For example, the Fixmas items, if you want to do that. So let's Maybe I shouldn't have done 2. Maybe I should just have done 1 line in between, then I had plenty of space. But as it was, it turned out to fit perfectly. Not even 1 tile off. So what I'm doing here is basically I started by saying, okay, we're going to get something inbound. I decided to have ingots inbound instead of having raw ore in or having the processed. And this is a very big decision. So do you bring iron plates in and iron rods and screws, or do you bring iron ore in and then process it in on site? I chose the middle option of choosing the ingots because there are also options where you, for example, combine different ingots. There's a steel plus concrete, for example, to make better steel. There is copper plus aluminum to make the alkyd aluminum sheets. And you can also, if you like it, you could also do some mixes of aluminum plus caterium to make some better caterium wire. So this keeps the options available. If you want to get different recipes for how to make ingots, you make them out in the world. However, since the quantities that I use are so low, I just have like pathetic small builds like this. This is all the iron that I use on the bus. Isn't it really? And this is actually twice as much as I need. Isn't it crazy that you just don't need iron for the game? I'm shocked about it. I am really shocked that I'm using for the entire bus I am using 240. Yeah, 240 iron. That's it. And everything is done. I'm using a little bit more for steel, sure. Steel is in the is using about 1,000 steel. So of course there's also some iron going to steel. But I was really surprised by how little iron I'm using. Also depending, of course, on your recipes. So I chose to have ingots. One of the things that I would say is a mistake is that I chose to have raw crystals out here, which means that I have to, in each branch that I'm using crystals, I will actually convert it into quartz crystals or to silica. However, I think there's one recipe that uses silica, and then there's a couple of recipes that use raw quartz crystals. So I think that it would be easier for me if I had just put both lanes in. I think that would mean the branches would be simpler, but that's a small thing. Concrete, and then that's kind of it. I'm also taking reanimated ore in, which I don't think is necessary because you don't really need it for anything, honestly. You need it for fluctuators, but that's a one-time thing. So let's look at how we branch off the bus, or how the bus looks. So what I've decided early on was I was saying there are some things that I'll have high quantity of, and that's going to be iron, copper, steel, so they get 2 lanes each. At the beginning, I was kind of unsure whether 2 lanes would be enough, and then I would say, you know what, even if it's not enough, then let me just add it later on. If this one sort of gets dried out, then I can later on just bring it in. I could, for example, just bring it in by having another one of these supplemented, and then bring the 2 lines here when they're sort of drying out, bring them into 1 line, and then sort of merge it into a box, and then have a new line supplying from the bottom into that. Why is there a dismantled crate over there? Damn. Oh well, let's try to ignore that. Then there are other things that I assumed that I just need 1 belt of, like caterium, all that stuff. And of course, this will always be sort of upgraded to your fastest possible belt. At this point, I'm at the end game, so I'm at 1200. But I've never really had any stage of the game where I was running out of materials because of belt capacity, which I think is the main concern. Was like, oh, but how do you scale up? And honestly, if I'm producing 25 million points per minute, and if we look at our base, I'm creating 2 ballistics warp drives per minute, and that's in like excess. I have excess 10 turbo motors per minute. I have excess 7 supercomputers per minute. I have excess 2.5 nuclear pasta per minute. I have excess singularity cells 45 per minute. Like I have decent production for everything we need. So I really don't see the point of building it bigger than that for anything except bragging rights. So that's the first thing, is you do not need more than 2 belts of anything at all in the base at any given time. Isn't that amazing? Like, how simple is that? Two belts, that's it. And if you are already typing away that you want to build bigger, go ahead. But for this base, which is insanely effective, I don't need it. So you don't need it either. And there's also the argument that, are you sure that nothing is running out? No, nothing is running out. There's nothing is running out. Everything is in surplus. So that's also a really cool thing about it. Let's look at the branches. There are 2 types of branches. One is the simple one, which is coming from here, where we just branch. Just basically take a belt and put it on, or a splitter, put it on the belt. I'm not using a smart splitter. That's deliberate. I don't want to use a smart splitter. I don't think that's the right thing to do. I think I just want to split it out here and then get in here, because this bus in Satisfactory only really works if all belts are saturated. As soon as something is not saturated, make sure that it gets saturated. So if I can't keep up with my 2000 copper consumption per minute, then I need to put in more copper consumption. Unfortunately, there are no warnings, so you kind of have to look at these yourself, or just basically look at the belts. If the belts are anything but full, then you have a problem, and that needs to be fixed. So I think that's a really good point. Branching, just going in here. Each branch consists of one fixed module that's always the same. That's the starter module. What this serves as a purpose is to basically have some room to get the stuff in, which is not enough room in, just honestly, and then have the export coming out. With the export is always coming out in the top lane, 1, 2, up here, going into a smart splitter that will take the main part going into a box, and the main box go into a box, which will then go mainly into the dimensional storage, secondarily going out to the bus. Yeah, these two, and this is like, if this belt is not full, then you can't really guarantee whether it goes on one or the other belts. So it's just make sure it's full, right? It's that simple. And this one will saturate, because this will only be used for your construction needs. And then if the dimensional storage is full, if the bus is full, then any excess gets thrown in here to the awesome sink. And hold on, give us something. Show us something that comes out in the awesome sink. Nothing much is coming out in the awesome sink. That's weird, isn't it? It's let me just look at reinforced iron plate. I have an excess of 4 per minute. Okay, so 4 per minute is going to be sent out there. That's not much. Okay, so then it comes out and goes back in, and it forms a new line. Could I have made the lines closer together? Absolutely. Absolutely could have made them closer together. But it would give us all sorts of other hassles. Again, space, not really a big concern. So I like this. It gives me a good overview. Yes, there's a long way to the end. There's a long way across, but it's a big base. Then we just go in here, and every single thing here is balanced so that belts are full. It's slowly consuming. What I'm also sort of doing now, the late game, is that I'm just using extra power shards, because power shards are free and infinite, because you can produce them yourself and they don't really cost anything. And power is abundant, quite abundant indeed, and I will be continuing to work on nuclear power, just because after in the next week, in the last week of my Factorio coverage, or Satisfactory coverage, before Factorio comes in, and you can see my consumption here is peaking at 129,000 megawatt or gigawatt. Here we also have status. Status is actually one of those that is being upgraded many times. So anyway, I was just going through the starter module here, and then going into the separate modules. All these modules are available as blueprints, and they are available to patron supporters. So if you are a patron supporter, you get access to all these blueprints. These are branches of the bus. These are also branches of the bus, and for phase completions as well. And then we also have some few things that are out in the world, but there are so many things. And the beautiful part about each of these builds is that when you place one down, you can always just place another one down at the end. Yeah. There. Once you place that, the only thing you need to do is hook up the power from one to the other. Oh, come on. One more. I think I missed it, didn't I? Yes, I did. I missed. Well, there. Hook up the power and hook up the lines here. And then that's it. Now you have one more module that's working. And this means that you start by building one module or 2 modules, whatever you think is reasonable. And then when you come back later on, for example, the best case is, a very good case is, you don't need a lot of rotors. You don't need basically any stators, and not many rotors, not many stators. But as soon as you start getting in here to motors, then motors start consuming quite a lot. And here we have motors that require 20 plus 20 plus 20 here another 20, and another 20. So it's like 60 of those. That is quite a lot. And then at that point, when you get the motors, then you can go back and scale up your stators and rotors, but you don't need to do it before. Likewise with encased industrial beams, you need them for Mark IV belts and a few kind of construction things, but later on you're going to use them a lot more for the heavy modular frames. Another example of this is circuits. In the beginning you just need circuits for crafting, but you can see here now I've extended it quite far down because you end up using quite a lot of circuits for a few things. And let's see, that was actually not it. I'm just want to check. We can just check together on this overlay to see where is our circuits. That's circuit boards. So where are they being consumed? They're primarily being consumed for the radio control units. So that means the radio controllers is consuming 75 of those. So when you get to the radio controllers, you need to scale up here. And this is the beautiful part about it, I think, that you can just go back. Crystal oscillators as well is something that you need an absolutely disgusting amount of. And this is why I'm using Somersloops here. This is also an important part. 738 megawatt for each. Totally worth it. I did have an argument with someone on a Twitch stream that said something that was just completely wrong, and I think I should mention here that there is a consensus that it is not good to use Somersloops on particle accelerators because they're too expensive in power, and I could not disagree more than that. You absolutely want to. You're only really limiting part in the game is Somersloops. You have 104 of them used for crafting on the map, and you cannot get more. There's 106 on the map, but 2 of them goes into research. So there's 104 that you can use, and that's it. You can never get more than that. So then the question is, you want to get your absolute maximum bang for the buck for this, and that means things that are annoying and slow and expensive, you want to put them in here. And if you don't scale it up, then you're going to have 3 of these machines that are scaled up with Somersloops. But if you just accept that, yep, it's going to be expensive. Like this is 2.5 normal manufacturers, so 2.5 to 2.5. This is 7.5 normal manufacturers. It's actually producing the same as 15 manufacturers. So good luck making 15 manufacturers. It's a pain in the ass to do infrastructure, space-wise, all that stuff, input resources. This consumes as much as 7.5 manufacturers, but produces as much as 15. That is very, very valuable. And that's definitely worth just a little bit of power. And I'm just literally saying a little bit of power because you can get so much power with the rocket fuel. The rocket fuel module that I have designed and is also available as a blueprint. You can just do that and get 200,000 megawatt of power from very, very easy. And going down here, some of the things that is surprising to me, like with the recipes I chose, I'm not really using computers. I'm just, yeah, I think I'm not really producing many computers. Like I'm producing 5 computers because they're not really used for anything. Also, high-speed connectors, I hate those, so I'm not using for anything. So they go back on the bus, forms a new line here, and they will then never ever be used for anything. And I don't use it for anything else. Then there's the thing here that is actually surprisingly the most critical one. That's the radio control units. These are damn expensive. So this is again a case where I max it out, and I max it out in terms of Somersloop so that we can get 45 radio control units per minute. And I'm using 40 per minute, so it's definitely needed because I am using the supercomputer recipe here. There are a number of reasons why this supercomputer recipe is good. Radio control units and cooling systems are both things that can be Somerslooped, and I will Somersloop them so that you get extra units of extra products for free. And also, since this is now a 2-ingredient one, it can be produced in an assembler, and that means I only need to get 2 Somersloops. You spend 2 Somersloops, and then I'm producing 15 supercomputers per minute. Lovely. Turbo motors is also, again, I even scaled it down because there's really no need for it. I'm using 0.5 turbo motors per minute. I don't know why they're not used for anything. Then we get through the usual. This is also a good example. Fused modular frames is Somersloops. So it is producing 7.5, and then we go into the next one, which is then only taking 2.5, and the other ones are disabled, so 2.5 here. and then gets us 5 pressure cubes. That means there's a huge excess of fused modular frames, but they're also used a little bit for resources. And then we go in here, this is one of the most expensive ones, and the nuclear pasta, because it uses 250 copper powder. And this is actually where I choose to spend a single Somersloops, so that I have a belt that produces, or a machine here that takes 750 inbound. This is pretty much this is 75% of all the copper consumption in the base is coming from these two. This is 1500 copper per minute. So I'm bringing it on the bus because I have the capacity to bring it on the bus. It's coming in here. Let me just make absolutely sure that these are, yes, they're Mark 6 and Mark 6. And you can see here, they're moving pretty damn rapidly and not moving really after all there at all. So this is where it gets in. This is expensive. It's also really expensive. It peaks at 20,000, which is 20,000 megawatt, which is definitely something. But again, you're getting pressure cubes at a discount. So I built 2.5 because that's what I need for my build, and then I'm also building 2.5 extra because I want to have some excess. And then we get into the tier 9 stuff. Time crystals are actually really annoying to make, and I think this is one of the cases where I really want to put any excess I have, maybe put them in here just to make sure that I get the excess. And that's specifically because I want to only use Mark 6 belts. And this one is completely drained because I upgraded all my belts, but it will just slowly catch back up. I think there's how much surplus do we have? We have a surplus of 67.5 without putting any Somersloops in here, but I like to put a few Somersloops in. Then we get to the last ones, neural processors, superposition oscillator, and power shards. They only really need a single build, and then they're good. And this one is also having a huge excess of dark matter crystals. If we put some time crystals in, then we get a lot of dark matter crystals, and that will actually take care of all our dark matter crystal needs for the rest of the base. Singularity cells are power shards. They're expensive, yes. But once you have them, you have them. That's it. They're just yeah. You just build them, and then they're fine. Yeah, I don't know what to say. This is just pretty simple. What build, and once it's done, it's done. And over here we have the singularity cells. Those are really expensive, but here's a really interesting thing about this. A nuclear pasta is a very valuable from a points perspective. And dark matter crystals, they're also, but iron is junk and copper is junk from a perspective of, I think this was 550,000 points, and copper and iron is not worth nothing. So you basically take 550,000 points and make it into 20 times 115,000 points. So there's a huge increase in resources or in points from singularity cell, to the point where I would even say that if I wanted to add more points, then this would be probably the best way to make points. Those 20 singularity cells are worth so many points. So that's just a neat trick. Like if you think about it, like 50 per minute, I'm using 2.5 per minute, which is one build over here, one of those nuclear pasta build. But then I get 50 per minute, and 50 times 115,000 is a lot. Yeah, there we go. That's a lot. I just calculated that. 24,000. And then, of course, we have the end of the bus. And yeah, we take damage if we go over the line, because we're so far out of the map now that this is literally the end of the map. And then on this side, like obviously, if I had more room, I'd build these 3 modules at the end. But alas, I ran out of space, and there was just enough room to put them over here. I am choosing to keep producing these builds, these ballistic warp drives, and biochemical sculptor, and the AI expansion server, and I'm just sending it back like so, and it's coming back here, and it's going back, and then it goes just into a sink, because the ballistic server is also really valuable. And this starter base is also worth mentioning. This is my starter base. It's the first thing I built, and it's still valid. Like, granted, I don't need the biofuel anymore, and that's just idling, but if I ever need some copper sheets, if I ever need some cables, if I ever need some wire, this is where it comes from. Or screws, or rods, or plates, or Not this one. This one can be taken out because this is reinforced iron plates. And also have rotors over here, but also my steel is built over here that goes into steel beams and steel pipes. So this is still valid, still relevant, and therefore I haven't removed it. And it's just sucking up resources from these two. Obviously they could be used for more beneficial things. But I think this is one of the key points about this base, is if we look at how much we have claimed, and whether you think this is a big base or a small base, we've basically not really tapped any resources. Like it, yeah, a few iron deposits, a few here, a little bit of oil here, a little bit of oil here, single oil down here. The aluminum is only these three. And then we also have this one, but it's just made into fixite trigons. So, you know, you can make a really big base if you want to do all of it, but then don't build a boss base. But if you want to complete the game and if you want to make a base that works for everything, then this is a really efficient base. Why are there all these buildings right here? Well, it's because I'm starting to work on the design for the nuclear power plant, which will be really complicated and really interesting. So that's going to be my next big project here. So that is basically it. What we're going to do is we want to upgrade this part, but I'm not going to do it in this episode. I'm going to make a separate little bit teeny tiny video that just does the spoiler thing, so that you can skip that video if you don't want the spoilers. I think that's the best thing. So, anything else about the boss? I think that the main point is that it's boring. I can totally understand that. I like my efficiency. It is it doesn't look good. Well, I mean, you can just build whatever you want in terms of sort of making this beautiful. And so if you want to make it beautiful, you can. You can also just use these modular blueprints in your own base, and they don't have to be on a bus. You just put things in here and bring it out on that side. And whether you make it into a nice factory individually, that is up to you. The modularity is not a problem. And so, and it's, yeah, I think that those are the main, the scaling up. You can see that this base doesn't need more than 2,400 of anything. So there is never a need for more than 2 belts. And even if there was, it would be copper, and that copper could just be added specifically. There's 1,500 being spent on nuclear pasta. So just add it back there. Aside from this, aluminum is also used kind of high quantity. Plastic, rubber is kind of high quantity, and steel, but none of those are breaking 1,000. So aluminum is just breaking 1,000. So that's like really low quantity of everything. So that's nothing in terms of scaling. Easy to add more resources to the belt, to the bus, and so I think that that's really what works. Why this works so well is in Satisfactory is because of the modularity. Like, one of the key issues, problems in Satisfactory, in my opinion, is that once you build a base, it's really hard to expand it, because you sort of made it into a nice looking base, and you were sort of designing against the resources that were nearby and whatever else. And then in this case, if you want to make more, it's not many clicks to add an extra module to the end of this. As long as you have belt capacity inbound, then just connect the belts, connect the pipes, connect the power, and then you're up and running with expanded resources. And I actually thought when I designed this base that I would be out and bumping into this wall because of the size of it, and it just turned out that wasn't the case. And I think Somersloops are another thing that helps a lot with free production for basically anything. So I think that's a walkthrough of my bus base. The last thing is just you can also supplement with like this, by getting things in with drones. You can probably also do it with trains. I just don't really see a lot of reason to use trains. I don't think they're very, very good. I think they look nice, but I don't think they're very good, especially now that belts can transport 1,200 per minute. Then that's kind of all you need for, like, 3 belts is going to take care of anything, or 2 belts is going to take care of any resource you want. So I don't know. Trains just don't seem so appealing to me in Satisfactory, because they take so much space and they are difficult to build and they're not really that clever. So you do it mainly for the aesthetics. But drones, I really like. They're easy to set up and they're easy to work with. So that's why I've chosen to add stuff with drones. Let's just see if I can get over there to see that. There's something coming in here with drones. That's diamonds, and trigons are coming in with drones. And then I just plop down a drone port. I could do the same thing with plastic or aluminium if I wanted to, but yeah, don't need it. There, you can see it's coming in and it's happy. And yeah, you're just trying to land. Yeah, so easy to set up. And then I've also added rocket fuel on the bus just to make sure that I can supplement fuel here. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. And remember, if you are a patron supporter and you want to build the space yourself, or want to get inspired into what you do, or what to do, and see some cool, neat, small designs for for everything in the game, then those blueprints are available here, and you can find them on the post on Patreon. So thank you very much for following along. There will not be so much progression. I'll stream this a few more times before we go into Satisfactory, into Factorial Space Age. And that will be focused on designing a nuclear power plant, which should be generating, rough numbers, is about 200,000 megawatt of power from an impure uranium node. That's like baseline figures. And some of the annoying stuff about it, we will take care of it through the use of modular blueprints, as usual. So thank you very much for following along. Thank you very much for supporting the series. And thank you for subscribing to the channel. And also, of course, biggest thanks to the people who are pledging on Patreon, whether you do it for the blueprint or whether you do it to support the channel. I appreciate it either way. Thank you for watching. Until next time, take care and stay effective.